Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Southborough Cable TV Committee to order at 3:03 p.m. And I'll read the following information. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, the meeting of the Southborough Cable TV Committee will be conducted by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time by a technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of September 4th, 2020, which were circulated prior to the meeting. Any additions, corrections, or changes to those minutes?
No.
Nope.
I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have to vote by roll call. Kathy,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and the chair also votes yes, so the minutes are approved. Let me bring the committee up to date on what has transpired since we met on the 4th. It was agreed at that time that John Marr would communicate with Bill Hewig by no later than last Tuesday to present Charter's responses to the proposals that we had made, and to communicate whether Charter would be willing to provide by email the documents that the town had requested. John did communicate with Bill and did provide responses to the proposals that we made. And their responses were as follows. Charter will agree to pay $3,800 per year for 5 years of a 5-year agreement in capital payments. Charter will agree to pay 5% in operational costs. Charter will agree to provide live feeds from the public safety building and the library, with the caveat that they would make in-kind deductions from the 5% to cover those costs. Charter will not agree to provide an HD channel because they don't provide anyone with an HD channel. And John can maybe explain this more fully as we get into the meeting. There's a technological reason for that. As far as I'm aware, there was no response to our request to provide by email the documents that we had requested. I then followed up with an email to John on Thursday, again requesting that the documents be provided. I received no response to that. I sent another email on Friday, again requesting it and saying we needed the documents by noon today so that I could share them with the other members of the committee prior to our meeting. I received no response to that. On Saturday, Bill transmitted to John as well as to me a draft of a possible renewal license containing the terms that Charter had presented on Tuesday. Early this afternoon, I think around noon or thereabouts, I communicated with John again, restating that we still had received neither the documents nor a response to our request that they provide the documents by email, and saying that based on that, I would be recommending to the committee that we proceed with what we had voted on at our last meeting, a notification to residents of the town that their license was expiring and going through the history of these discussions. John communicated with me a short time ago to say that he would be attending the meeting and he would be responding to our request that they send the documents by email at the meeting today. So with that, I see John and Bill, you're both muted. I think it would make sense for you both to unmute so you can participate in the discussion. First of all, I'd be interested if you think I've misstated or misrepresented anything that's transpired since our last meeting.
I'm good.
Okay, Bill, you're still muted.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. No, you stated it fairly, Barry. Barry. That's my understanding, point by point as well.
Okay. So I guess the first order of business is for the committee to discuss whether the terms that Charter is proposing are acceptable to the committee. Again, I think we discussed at the last meeting, it looks like we're going to have to do a 5-year license because the capital piece is just not going to work. It might work for Charter, but it won't work for us, and to do what we wanted will work for us, but it doesn't work for Charter. So that's why we sort of said we do 5 years. And I think we agreed that the 3,800 represents 20% of the amount, and Charter has roughly 20% of the market in Southborough. So those two items, I think, we talked about. We had pushed for 5%. They're willing to go to the 5%. Now, a word on the in-kind deductions. We don't have the right, as I understand the FCC regulations, and Bill can correct me on this, we don't have the right to tell them that they can't deduct the amounts that it costs them to put in whatever they need to put in to do the live feeds. So it's not a matter of whether we want to agree to that. It's just them telling us that they're going to do that. Am I right about that, Bill?
That's correct, Barry. The FCC order is not optional for us. It may be optional for the cable company, but not for the town. If they want to follow it and enforce it and invoke it, they are legally allowed to do so.
Now, what I said to Bill in terms of drafting contract language is to make clear that Sam has the right to request a reasonable estimate of what it will cost to go ahead with that, so they can make a decision whether they want to do it or not. If it's going to cost them $100,000, I suspect they would say, no, thank you. So the way it would work, at least as Bill and I have talked about it, is Sam would ask, through the town, would ask Charter for an estimation of how much it would cost. They would provide the figure, and then Sam could decide at that point whether to go forward with it or not.
One question. If Sam decides not to go forward with, the broadcasting on Charter, And if we say to Charter, okay, we don't want your cable service at the, in our buildings, does that mean that we can charge 5%? Because the fair market value of nothing is nothing, right?
No, we get the 5%. Our position is we get the 5% whether we do the live feeds or not.
Okay. But wouldn't they try and deduct the fair market value of those live feeds?
Well, we wouldn't ask if Sam says it's too expensive, we don't want to do it, then there's no cost.
Right.
And again, Bill or John, please jump in if I misstate something.
I believe that's correct, Barry. If the license makes an obligation upon the cable operator, like our license would, if we elect to have the live feeds, then it's an obligation. Then if this comes under the FCC's order, they would be permitted at their option to pass the costs through to us. If we elect not to have the live feeds, there are no costs to pass through, at least with respect to live feeds.
Next question would just be, how is fair market value determined?
That's a question for the cable company, John. I have no idea how you guys do that. How would you determine the fair market value of the services to provide live feeds?
Yeah, our enterprise team, it's treated as a business line. So our commercial enterprise team would have put a price on it for that circuit.
Another question would just be if Charter's going to make us pay money for that circuit, then can we resell the circuit if we can find a buyer?
What do you mean by that, Bill?
What I mean is that if they're charging us for a circuit, they valued the circuit, right? Okay, so let's say we decide to pay that. Can we then turn around and sell it to someone else? Can we sell that use of that particular Charter channel to someone else?
For example, whom?
I don't know. Maybe maybe someone who, for whatever reason, wants to have their own public access channel and would like to do that.
Well, let's be clear here. What we're paying for. We're paying not to own something. I don't even know. I'm not sure what the payment, how the law would look at the payment we are required to make. I don't think it's a lease. I'm not sure it is a sufficiently legal interest in that live feed, that circuit, or that line that would give us anything to sell to anybody else. I'm not sure that we have anything to sell. Charter would certainly say they're going to continue to own it. They certainly say they're going to continue to operate it. And the cost that we are being asked to pay is a cost for it is a compensation for their costs to provide that to us. So I'm not sure, Bill. It's an interesting question. It would require some research, but I'm not sure we have a sufficient legal interest in anything with respect to that feed to sell to anybody else.
Okay. Another question would be, could Charter insist that we accept the circuit even if we don't use it and that we then have to pay for it?
Well, no, because under the license, we tell them we are interested in having live feeds connected. Tell us how much they're going to cost and we'll let you know whether we want them or not. So they're not going to insist on it. They simply respond to our request for a cost. And if we don't like the cost, we are not obligated to take it. Okay.
Let's suppose that, that we do take it and it ends up reducing, let's say most of our 5%. Can Verizon come back on a level playing field issue and say, we want the same treatment?
Well, it wouldn't even be a level playing field issue. they have the legal right to say that right now because the FCC order would allow them to do it. So if they are not charging us for whatever the comparable service would be, that is charging us for live feeds, if they're not doing it, they can elect to do it anytime, irrespective of whether we have an agreement with another cable company, either way. So Verizon can elect to do it anytime, regardless of Charter's license or our obligations under it.
If the FCC changes leadership and they change this policy, they rescind 621, does that mean it automatically, if we were paying something, some fair market value, that would stop at that point?
Yeah, the way we've drafted the language in the agreement says they can only do it if it's permitted by FCC regulations.
Yeah.
So if the regulation is rescinded, it's overturned in court, thing like that, their only rationale for doing it is the FCC regulation, not any grant from the town. So if that authority disappears, their authority to take the deduction disappears.
Okay. Well then, and I assume that would be retroactive, if it was thrown out in court. One question would be, suppose it's thrown out in court, right? 6 months from now. And at that time, can we then say to Charter that, well, hey, we are interested in that live feed channel?
The answer is yes, under the license.
Okay, as long as, if 621 goes away, I would like to, for us to be able to come back into Charter and say, hey, we may not have taken the, your circuit for 6 months, but now we want it.
Sure. And here's what the license that we propose says, Bill. Upon request of the issuing authority, okay? Licensee shall provide and maintain 2 live feeds of all necessary switching and processing equipment in order to switch live upstream signals and PEG access programming from the locations at Exhibit B. And it says the cost of providing that will be passed through to the issuing authority to the extent permissible by the FCC. Third report and order released August 2nd, 2019. That's a so-called 621 order. So there's 2 things at work. One, it's our option. We can elect to do it now or anytime. And 2,
Okay.
only if the FCC order remains in effect can they pass any costs through to us.
Is it possible for their cost, they only have 400 subscribers. Is it possible that the fair market value of what they're providing to us outweighs the amount of revenue that, or the 5% that would otherwise be sent to us? Could we end up having to pay extra money, for this fair market value thing?
Well, the question is it possible? The answer is, I suppose it is. I have no idea how much these costs are. But my understanding, and John, maybe you can chime in here, are these costs really that big, John, especially if the buildings are going to be fairly close? Maybe, I don't hear an answer from John. So Bill.
Yeah, no, I'm here, Bill. I wouldn't imagine the construction costs are, but it's the recurring cost that, year after year could add up.
But those are just maintenance costs, basically, right?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, transmission of signals through the line is not a big expense, is it?
Yeah, to answer your question, I don't really know what the cost is. I couldn't imagine it would, like someone mentioned $100,000. I wouldn't imagine that would be the cost, but I don't know.
All right, so.
I don't want to guess.
I think John answered, my another question of mine, which would be that, if we get into this and 621 stays in effect, it sounds like if the quote unquote fair market value is perceived by Charter to go up, they can charge us more.
Well, the answer to that would be if there is a precipitous rise in fair market value, I would say the issuing authority has a right to send Charter a letter and say, prove it. prove the fair market value's gone up. If you're doubling or tripling the costs all of a sudden, and it looks somehow suspicious or inordinate, the issuing authority, as the issuing authority, has a right to ask Charter for an explanation. All right. That would be our remedy.
Okay, and we can do that even now, right? If Charter comes back with a very high number, we could send them a letter, asking for them to justify that.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay.
And I assume, being a good partner with us, John, Charter would cooperate. If you want our business, you would anyway. But that's,
Yeah, well, part of me wonders, like, if you're getting the 80 grand in capital from Verizon and roughly 20 grand from us, wouldn't those monies be used to pay for this? So you have 100 grand. Since someone mentioned 100 grand, that actually adds up to 100 grand, but couldn't those funds be used for that?
Well,
Well, John, you remember back in our ascertainment, we didn't take that into account in any of the ascertainment numbers we gave to either you or Verizon. So the answer to that is no. We have not allowed for those to be funds, to be funded by money that we're getting from you. We've allocated those funds for other future cable-related needs. So the answer is no. I mean, if that's going to be your position, then we'll add that on top of the money, on top of the capital we're asking from you.
No, it's not my position. I was just asking a question, Bill.
Okay, I think the answer is no, John.
And John, do you want to, unless anybody has further questions on the 621 piece of it, do you want to explain to the committee why Charter is not in a position to provide an HD channel? I understand you've represented that you haven't provided one anywhere, but I got from your email that there's a technological reason why you're unable to do it.
Hi. Earlier, it's better now, but I couldn't hear Barry when he first spoke earlier in the meeting, but I think I got the gist of what he said at the end. I'm hearing him better now, but as far as the HD channel, yes, we haven't offered it. Our network isn't all IP based, which would make it much easier to do HD. And we just haven't, I mean, the PEG channels are supposed to be the soapbox for a community and not ESPN or a broadcast channel. So yeah, we just haven't offered HD channels as a principle.
Okay.
And because
Any
our network, I
questions?
think the technology piece is the fact that we're not all IP based. Like I think Verizon Fios is, and I believe Comcast is as well.
Okay. Any questions on that piece? Okay. So just to summarize, I think that when we look at the Verizon license and what Charter is proposing, Charter is falling below what Verizon agreed to in a number, well, two respects mainly. One is, at least so far, Verizon has not indicated any intention to make in-kind deductions. They never brought it up during our discussions with them, and they've taken no steps to notify us of their intention to do that going forward. So the 5% we get from Verizon is a true and full 5%. And secondly, Verizon did agree to provide an HD channel. So understand they're different situations, and I don't think our position has ever been you have to do exactly what Verizon has done, but I think we need to recognize that what Charter is proposing is less beneficial to the town than what Verizon has agreed to already. Now, having said that, I think we have a number of options to us. we could go back and say this is not acceptable. And I don't know that we have the legal right to tell them they can't do in-kind deductions. In fact, I'm sure we don't have the legal right to tell them they can't do that. I suppose we could ask for, following up on the point that John, I don't think intended to make, but Bill made, that maybe we should seek more in capital to cover the increased costs that we're going to be facing. So that's one option. On the high definition channel, I'm not sure there's much we can do about that. And I'm not sure it makes a difference. I guess Charter subscribers will just have one less option than Verizon subscribers. Yeah, I'm not sure that's a big issue for me or for Sam. So the question, I think, is do we say, okay, well, there's one other outstanding issue I'd like to get resolved before we sort of make a decision on the terms of the agreement. And that is, John, what is Charter's position on providing us the documentation we requested by email?
Yeah, so the Form 500 that's filed with the DTC annually has the vast bulk of that information, which the town receives on an annual basis. As far as anything else the town may need, we'd have to get confidentiality stuff through our legal department to Bill, and if you want us to jump through all those hoops and really do that, but the Form 500 from the DTC should satisfy all the information that you're looking for.
Okay. We jumped through all these hoops. We asked for these documents more than 6 weeks ago. And now you're going to jump through hoops to give us, and you represented to me that there was less than up to 10 pages of documents. And I'll be honest with you, John, the conclusion I draw from Charter's response to this is there's something you don't want us to see. I don't know what other reason there could be.
No, Barry, that isn't the case at all. I mean, I have the documents, but legal has to, make sure the it's not in my control, I guess, is the best way for me to put it.
Okay,
The
can you
Form
tell me?
500, the Form 500 information, that isn't enough information for you to make that determination?
I would have to take a look at it, but clearly there's other documents we've requested that go beyond that. And you haven't given me any reason for not providing it to me, other than some lawyer has to look at it. I, for one, I'm telling you, John, I'm not going to vote to approve any package until I see the documents. And if we're not going to be close to approving a package now, then as we discussed at the last meeting, we have an obligation to the residents of the town to advise them of what's going on. You've been playing games with this for over a month.
Well, as I said, I think the Form 500 information is sufficient.
Is it responsive to everything we've asked for?
I believe so.
Okay, so Charter is representing that all of the information requested in the letter we sent the town sent in July is covered in the form that's been filed with the DTC.
I believe so, yes.
Well, John, 6 weeks, either it is or it isn't, not I believe so.
Well, that's up for you to decide.
Like, I don't have, you're more familiar with the form than I am, but I'm going to see if I can find our request. And you can tell me whether the document contains that information or not. This might take me a minute. I'm sorry, but not there. All right. Here it is.
John, when did you last file a Form 500? Do you remember? Do you know?
Yeah, they're filed every spring, I believe in March for the
Okay.
prior year.
Does it have all written complaints for the last 3 years?
Yes, it has all written complaints for the prior year.
For the prior 3 years?
Well, yeah, the last 3 years filed will have the prior 3 years, yes.
Does it have records of outages for 3 years?
Like I said, I believe so.
Records of service calls for repair and maintenance for 3 years?
I believe so.
John, you're guessing. You don't know, do you?
I don't do the Form 500 myself.
Okay, then don't make representations about what's in it.
John, are you certain you filed one last year? I'm not even sure Form 500s are still filed anymore.
Yes, we're required to file them annually.
And you're sure you filed one last March?
Yes.
Because I don't even see them on the DTC's website anymore. See Form 100, 2, 3, and 4, but no Form 500 here. I can't find it on anywhere on their website. I'm not sure that the form is still a form that's filed.
No, it is. One of them is confidential. The 300 is a income statement or balance sheet or something. One of them's confidential, but the Form 500 isn't. The town is sent a copy too, I believe, every year.
Okay, everything that comes in from the cable companies, I get a copy of. I have not seen such a document. But you're saying it's available on the DTC website, and it sounds to me like Bill is saying it's not.
Yeah, I don't know what the DTC, if they post them or not.
Well, how are we supposed to get it then?
It was sent to the town, Barry.
John, how long would it take you to get us a copy and email it to us? I mean, obviously, we're dealing with, minutes here in a couple of days, not months and weeks anymore. We need some pretty quick answers here, or there's going to be no license. Can you get it to us this afternoon?
I can't commit to this afternoon, but tomorrow afternoon I should be able to get it by.
Well, and I stand corrected. I thought our letter was sent in July. It was sent in June. And apparently you can't get a lawyer to look at something for 3 months or whatever it's been. So we have to hold up the process until you can find someone to look at something to see if it's okay for us to see it.
I just found one here. Interruption data, Form 500. So does tomorrow afternoon work?
Well, it's hard for me to commit because I don't know what's in the document, and I'm not going to commit that that represents a complete response to what we've asked for.
Wouldn't this necessitate another meeting of the committee?
Well, I think that's going to be required in any of that. Well, we have two options. We can set another meeting with the expectation that Charter will actually do what it says it's going to do, and there's no history of that. Or we can just say, okay, this is not acceptable. We're going to send out the notice to the town, to people in the town that we discussed at the last meeting, letting them know, and wait to hear, to see if Charter does anything.
Well, I mean, we haven't even gone through the, Bill, we haven't even gone through the language in your proposal yet either. So I don't know if you want to do that, or that's what I thought we were going to do on this call. Or you and I can do it offline if you want to do it that way.
Well, it's Barry's meeting, and he may have intended to do that after we get past the issue of the documents. I don't know, John.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have is I have no interest in agreeing to any terms until I see the documents. So I guess in theory, we could talk about the language in the agreement, but again, and I said already, I'm not going to vote in favor of these terms based on the information I have now. So there's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse here. I understand we want to move things along, but and I guess we have everybody, although, well, I guess we have everybody. We can spend some time doing that, but I don't want to create the false impression that I'm in favor of this deal as we sit here today. If the committee wants to, well, I think that we cannot go through it under the open meeting law because the other two members of the committee have not seen the document, and we can't have a discussion of a document that the other members of the committee have not seen.
I think you're correct on that, Barry.
I think you are too, Barry.
So here's what I would suggest. 3 things. Number one, John is going to get Bill a copy of the Form 500 by tomorrow afternoon. I would say I would want by tomorrow afternoon a representation from Charter that either A, Form 500 fully responds to the town's request, or B, to the extent there are additional documents, they have been reviewed by council and will be provided to me by email by no later close of business on Wednesday.
Are you making
So I
it a
need-
motion?
Yeah, well, okay. And the third piece would be John and Bill can discuss offline the terms of what is now just an agreement that the town might consider at some point down the road. I'll stop there. Any discussion of what I've said? Any thoughts people have?
I have two questions. One is, if we do this Wednesday, which I can certainly do, but if we do this Wednesday and the license lapses, does Charter have the legal right to actually pump a signal into Southborough?
If the license is lapsed and the parties are not continuing to negotiate in good faith and agreeable to having the license continue on its terms, no. It takes agreement by both parties to keep the license in full force and effect after its expiration.
My second question would just be, more of a liability question, personal liability. I mean, can the members of the committee be sued individually?
For what?
Well, if Charter wants to, or the FCC, I mean, they might want to get involved.
Well, the charter is not going to be able to sue the town or the committee under the Cable Act. I don't know why a member of the community would sue the committee. You're doing your duty. You've acted in good faith. And there is such a thing as the discretionary function exemption to the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act, which says that if public officials, which you are, exercise their discretion in a policy-making decision, they can't be sued or held accountable. So my opinion is there would be no basis for anybody to sue you for making a decision and doing your job and using your best judgment and discretion with respect to however you choose on the license.
Thank you for answering it. That sounds good.
And Bill Warren, we have licenses lapse all the time in communities and just continue business as usual.
And
John,
we
I
have-
don't think that there's been a lot of good faith shown.
I mean, that's it. To follow up on that point, we had that situation with Verizon, and we did agree to continue the license because in our view, Verizon at all times was dealing with us in good faith. My perspective is we do not have the same situation with Charter.
I'm in agreement that it's not been good faith either.
So let's go back to what I said in terms of what I would be expecting to happen in the next 2 days. We would have to get either a representation by Charter on Tuesday that all the information we have requested is contained in document form 500 and that form has been transmitted to Bill Hewig, or a representation that it doesn't contain all the information, but that it's going to be provided to us by no later than, the additional information will be provided no later than close of business on Wednesday. People have thoughts, favor of that? Any variations on that?
I think that's fine myself.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I
Okay,
move that the committee vote to follow that course.
Second,
okay, all in favor, Kathy,
yes.
Will,
Yes.
and the chair is also in favor. All right, so, and the third piece of that is we give Bill permission to work with John on language in the agreement so that if and when we get a satisfactory resolution of the document issue, we'll be in a position to decide, A, that these terms are acceptable to the committee, and B, that the draft agreement is acceptable to the committee, which I would hope to do, again, depending on the timing, if everything is resolved tomorrow, we could have a meeting on Friday. If it's not till the close of business on Wednesday, then we're probably gonna have to put it off till Monday. Which, if it works, would still give us time to get on the, theoretically time to get on the selectmen's agenda for the 22nd. But that's neither here nor there. All
Okay,
right. Everybody understand, and I'm now speaking to you, John, you understand what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Any other business before the committee?
no,
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
second,
All in favor, Kathy?
Yes.
Will?
yes.
Chairman votes yes, the meeting is adjourned. Thank everyone for participating, appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
All right.